On this episode of Inside Engineering, we talk with Mike Adams, a director in our Florida Transportation Group, about managing projects and personnel, what he wished he'd known earlier in his career, and lessons learned throughout it. Inside Engineering, untold stories and fascinating people from the world of civil engineering. This is episode 10, recorded in September 2019. Transportation, Projects, and People with Mike Adams. Inside Engineering is brought to you by RK&K. Learn more at rkk.com. And welcome back to another episode of Inside Engineering. Thanks for joining us this week. We're really happy this week to have all the way from Florida with us in the studio is one of our directors, Mike Adams. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So your title is Director, Transportation. Can you tell us what that means? Because it's pretty general title.
Yeah, sure. It's not about getting you back and forth to the airport, that's for sure. What I do in Florida is attempt to expand our planning design functions within the company, working primarily for the DOT down there, Florida Department of Transportation. We do have a lot of other municipalities, but right now we're a very small group and we're looking to grow and expand our expertise and influence within the state of Florida.
What kind of work do you get to do?
Mostly roadway design elements of it, but a lot of what we have right now is more planning aspects. So NEPA studies, looking for roadway planning aspects of that. We do have some continuing services contracts, which we put staff in-house into the DOT. So we're a valued member of the overall team for Florida Department of Transportation, especially in Central Florida, which is where we're focusing our growth initially.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned NEPA studies. Mm-hmm. For anyone who might not know, can you walk us through what a NEPA study is?
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's hugely important now. There's a lot of NEPA work going on all over. What is it?
Yeah, NEPA stands for National Environmental Policy Act. It was instituted in the 70s, related to requirements associated with planning projects and anything that's federally funded. So those studies are to make sure we're not impacting the environment negatively or mitigating for those negative impacts. So that's a lot of what we do within the state of Florida.
And those studies, how long does a study typically take?
Well, when you get these major new roadway facilities, it can take upwards of they say 4 years, but they've gone on as long as 10. I think now, as we're seeing a change in the direction of how we do business, they're trying to accelerate those processes and streamline, I guess is a better way. We're not looking to avoid any of the evaluations we're doing, but looking to streamline the process and cut it back to significantly less time. A small widening project might take, 2 years. A larger project might take 3. Major new investment study type projects where you're doing new alignment might take 5 to 10. So.
And is that streamlining that's happening, is that just a result of lessons learned from previous ones? Is there regulation involved?
It's regulation. It's mostly Federal Highway Administration. They fund the majority of most of these studies or have a piece of that funding. The state of Florida has been very independent on moving forward with a lot of projects without federal funding, and they proceed on the state process, but it does mimic the same federal process of NEPA.
So yeah, they just seen that there's a better way to do it, and
yes.
then sort of made that the more standard process.
There's an awful lot to the oversight from a lot of different jurisdictions, so that is why the timeline is where it is. The streamlining is more about creating relationships and understanding that we're all in this together. We're looking to combine federal funding sources, improvements beyond just maybe a roadway, improved trail, more healthy communities type work.
A lot. Yeah, we're doing a lot of work with kind of the healthy communities. We actually have a healthy communities group here, which you work with a lot. We're going to have them on the podcast soon.
Oh, good.
And so you mentioned relationships and with the clients. How big a part of what you do involves relationships with clients?
Personally, probably 95% of what I do is relationships with clients and with our staff as well. RK&K does pride itself on its people. So a lot of my job is making sure that I'm providing what is necessary for our staff to be successful. That does translate to the clients as well. Right now, we're trying to establish relationships at every level. So our entry-level engineers are working with entry levels of our client. We're trying to get them to meetings. Those relationships that are built now, they're going to be using for the next 15, 20 years because this business is very tight. So we're interviewing people now that have had relationships for the last 15 years just from one seminar, one meeting, and they've continued those relationships. Some of them are client consultants, some of them are peer-to-peer, but all of them are beneficial in doing our work.
A big part of what you do is sort of professional development or the development of staff. And, you mentioned pairing newer team members with the newer team members from the client. How do you measure the success of your teams when you have a wide range of experiences, that you're overseeing and different levels of expertise and different focuses? How do you measure the success of all that?
It's not as much quantitative as it is qualitative. From internally, you want to come to work every day, you want to feel challenged, and you recognize when you're seeing some staff members that might not feel that way. So you're looking for new challenges with them. Some of them like the marketing aspect, prefer to work with a client. Some of them like the technical aspect, prefer to kind of be, with a peer technically and figuring out this great engineering challenge and really don't want to have to do that business development or the political aspects of what we do from a consulting standpoint. So it's just kind of feeling and understanding how everybody's interacting and working together. The other side for the client is client interviews, meeting with them on a regular basis, just assessing how your staff is doing with them, because they're usually more than happy to tell you if you ask the question, but they're not going to come to you and say, hey, I felt a little disappointed in some delivery aspect of what you guys have been doing. And it's usually just a miscommunication, a misunderstanding that's easily correctable.
That feedback is really important. I've always found that seeking out feedback, you may not always get it
right
passively.
Sometimes you have to read between the lines, but usually they'll give you everything you need to make sure that you can get a project back on track, get maybe a staff member that's just being misunderstood back to as a positive member of their team. And that's really, we're looking to always to add value to our clients. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest project to add value. A lot of times it's just the smallest projects where you can add the most value to their day.
You're obviously further along in your career now.
Is that your polite way of saying I got a lot of gray hair?
That is not what I meant at all. But you do a lot of big picture stuff now. Along the way to getting where you are now, what are some of the things that, as an engineer, you really enjoyed doing?
I liked seeing the product complete. I started from more of a planning aspect where we did studies and we didn't do construction. So we never saw something go on the ground, a year after I finished it. So it was more the deliverable, seeing the clients happy, gets them to the next phase is a lot of what I did. Once I was more involved in some of the design aspects, seeing a project built is awesome. I'm not a structural engineer, but I'm sure those guys love the fact when they get a big signature bridge put up, it's something they can point to, and it's a source of pride for everybody. So I think one of the areas I've always excelled was more on the personality standpoint, is kind of working with clients, having a sense for just being able to read body language, understand whether or not they're happy with us, not happy with us. And I think that's why I'm more in the management track than the technical track.
Sure. What's something you wish you had known earlier on in your career?
I was more of a technical geek initially. I was always about the project. I wish, one of the things they didn't teach in college back in the day was about the marketing aspect and the importance of the relationship and maintaining that as much as the technical expertise, because there were definitely times early in my career where I knew I did a better technical product, but we weren't necessarily selected for a job because we didn't have the same relationships or the same approach. So I wish I'd understood and been exposed a little bit more to the client aspect of our business.
Sure. You mentioned marketing a couple times, and in the civil engineering world, marketing is a little bit different. We use that word a little bit differently than we might in other places. It's not necessarily advertising, social media. It's actually proposals and winning work and those relationships. Can you talk about you just mentioned some of the importance, but can you talk about the importance of marketing at a civil engineering firm?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that don't get enough credit is the staff that we employ in our marketing groups in terms of preparing proposals and understanding how to package our technical expertise such that a client can easily understand it and recognize the value that it adds. So when I first started in Florida, we were very small, didn't have a local marketing manager. It was very difficult and tedious to try to show them how strong we were technically. Once we got a marketing manager down there, things changed drastically. We were able to put together much better proposals. Somebody looking, engineers can't typically write. I mean, you engineers, it's inside engineering. We all have to admit it. We didn't grow up to be a writer. We grew up to crank numbers and design and build things and find solutions. So they do bring that next step to the client. And quite frankly, our clients are less technical now than they were 10 and 15 years ago. So you're having to balance that technical information with more lay terms, more layman's understanding of how we do our business. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be successful in the business development and the quote unquote marketing aspect of winning a project.
Sure. I think that's more reason than ever why our clients do rely on us to be technical experts. But like you said, you can't just be totally technical in how you're selling that work to them and how you're going to accomplish it. It's there's an art to it. There's a lot of creativity involved.
There is. And a lot of times us engineers aren't creative. We're creative with solutions, hard numbers, straight lines, but we don't think creativity in artwork or being able to understand how we can impress our strengths and skills on somebody, other than just look how great I designed this bridge or how great I designed this road or this drainage facility or wherever we might be working with. So that aspect sometimes is underlooked in our business about how we bring that creativity back in, and have the fact that we have a strong marketing department at RK&K, a strong graphics department at RK&K really helps us to be able to sell our technical capabilities.
Absolutely. Let's talk about a project or two for a minute. Can you think of a project that you are working on now or have worked on recently that you're, I know you're proud of all of them, but one that sort of you really connected with in terms of who you are and the work that you do?
Yeah, I'm a little bit more unique with some of the directors. They typically had a lot of projects coming in. I was hired in to really grow a group, so there hasn't been a lot of strong project-related ties that I've had. But I did have a similar contract where I worked previously. We also have, which is a continuing services contract where we provide staff. And as our clients have become less and less technical, they rely on us more. So it's always been very proud that the work that our staff does on these types of projects, that I get a phone call, or when I do run into the client, they're like, hey, I really appreciate the work this person or that person has been doing. So that has been very rewarding to me. These days, as a director, I find myself working more with staff than projects, and that for me is the most satisfying, is working with a client that recognizes that our staff is working hard. And quite frankly, they do. They get calls at all times of day, at night. They work weekends when they have to, and that type of contract because they're under deadlines that the client is looking for, and we're there to help them on these fire drills. And so the dedication we have with the staff that does that type of work is something we're very proud of.
Can you talk about what it's like to be one of those staff members that's working with a client and sort of what that entails from kind of beginning to end?
Yeah. This is in particular, this contract we have is with the Florida Department of Transportation in Central Florida in District 1. They are there 1 to 2 days a week typically, but working back in the office on those other days. So they're working as supplemental staff. So a project will come up, it'll have an issue, a problem, something that was unanticipated. They'll go to our staff, ask for some technical expertise. But the truth is, until they can get those questions answered, they're not going to be able to continue to move forward with a project. So a lot of times we're spending a significant amount of time developing the process, like to fit this within the process of the Federal Highway Administration or the state process. This is what we need to do. We need to kind of wrap this up. And a lot of it is packaging. The staff that we have there are very good writers, very good technical writers. So they're taking information from some projects that may be technically based and fitting it in the process and explaining to the review agencies that this is why we have to do this. This meets your criteria. So it's a difficult job because you have a different standard set. If you have your own project, you win a job and you have a very set schedule, you can understand and you can control that schedule. These types of contracts, the client is in great need at usually at an instant, get calls at 4:30 on a Thursday and say, hey, can you have this to me at 8 o'clock on Friday morning? Our staff is dedicated enough to work that Thursday night or over that weekend if it's Friday to Monday, which has happened a lot, especially as Florida is growing. They have a big work program, so we do support some of their upcoming projects. So they're saying, hey, we're going to put this out to advertisement. I need some information about this and scope something for you. So that's where we help.
It really is like, what does the client need?
Yep. Whatever they need, we'll find a way to solve it. We've brought in expertise from other areas of RK&K. Traffic is one that comes to mind from outside the state of Florida to help solve some initial issues with them, and it's been working very well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mike, what is something that you are curious about right now, either professionally or personally? What's something you're interested in?
Curious about professionally. I can say that as I look to hire more talent within the state of Florida is where all this is coming from. I'm very interested to see how these schools are beginning to ramp up for the type of work that we have. We're involved in a lot of recruiting fairs, but really at the baseline is, what are they teaching these kids, and can they come out a little bit more prepared? I know we've had several discussions about different generations, my generation versus the newer generations coming in. So it's really, how do we make that fit? How do we leverage the experience and the gray hair, as you didn't call me, but my gray hair versus somebody's enthusiasm coming into this market, coming into this area to be a great engineer. That's what interests me, is how we can continue to foster the mentorship of those two. And, really we're working at two different types of people. So how do we make sure that those personalities gel to bring the best opportunities for everybody?
Indeed. That's a big part of, I think every company kind of faces that challenge. But I think we're really proud of our culture here at RK&K.
We definitely are. And we have a culture group that's trying to make sure that as we grow, that we're not going to lose the tangibles that make us who we are. And really that's part of the reason that I'm here, is understanding that it's an employee focus and you don't have to jump through a lot of hoops. If you can find a solution, the company is more than happy to ingrain that, to bring that to fruition for you within the process of RK&K.
You've got lots of experience handling those kinds of things, and experience comes from lessons learned. Mm-hmm. What's a lesson that you've learned from something that you have failed at?
Well, it was previously, but I think a lot of times we fear that our clients won't be empathetic to our plight. We all make mistakes. We're human. We catch it in our processes, but sometimes things still slip through. And that's what happened to me probably about my 6th or 7th year in. A project that we had to go to a public hearing that wasn't properly advertised. Wasn't anything the fault of the company I was with, but it never got in the paper the proper way. So immediately hit it head on, went to our client, said, mea culpa, hey, this didn't get done. We can't, if we go to this public hearing, it's not going to meet our public requirements. I was worried that all of a sudden I was going to be fired. I was going to be a pariah. They were never going to let me in the district again. And what happened was almost 180 degrees. They recognized that nobody's perfect. They said, thank you for coming to me as quickly as you could. We minimized the damage. We came back and without any additional cost to the client was able to come back and do a great public hearing for him at the time. So I think the lesson learned there was, don't assume that perfection is what our clients are looking for. Assume that the relationship and the understanding and the adaptability don't come with just problems, come with solutions. And that served me very well since then.
That's good. Along with being honest,
mm-hmm.
That it would be easy to sort of cast the blame elsewhere or not own up to anything.
Yeah,
at
as
all.
A project manager or as a director, it is my responsibility, even if it's not my fault. It's my responsibility. Right. So you accept responsibility where it is, and very few clients hold that against you.
That goes along with one of our previous picks of the week from Tom Earp. He picked a book called Extreme Ownership.
Okay,
talking about owning up to everything that happens on your team, even if you weren't the one that did it. So that fits in well.
I'll have to put that on the list.
It's good. It's written by a former Navy SEAL.
Okay.
I forget his name right now, but yeah, it's Extreme Ownership is the name of that book. So, So speaking of picks of the week, Mike, it's time for yours, and Mike's going to give us a recommendation for something. I don't know what it is, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's interesting because I spend an awful lot of time in a vehicle, so I can get some books on tape, but I have a tendency to kind of just decompress during that time. So really, I've been binge watching different things that people have recommended, and Amazon Prime has something, I think it's called The Boys, which is about superheroes.
Yes,
it's supposed to start their next season coming up, so I binge watched that over last weekend. And if you like something that's a little creepy, a little weird, and not your typical superhero stuff, that's definitely for you. I enjoyed it, but I also enjoy a lot of bad B movies.
Okay.
So, take that with a grain of salt. And, I think anything that brings a little bit of humor to our lives day to day is something that's enjoyable. I'm a big sports fan, but, at the end of the day, if I can make fun of myself to others and we can enjoy and have a laugh over, something that happens day to day, that's part of the camaraderie that I like here at RKK.
Indeed. Well, Mike, is there anything we haven't talked about that you would like to discuss for a minute or two? We've got a little bit of time left.
No, I would say that to all those prospective RK&K employees, don't pigeonhole yourself. Be open to a lot of change and a lot of opportunity. I myself, as an aerospace engineer graduate from the University of Maryland, never really practiced aerospace engineering, but it did teach me a lot of things that I'm applying now. Problem solving, overall management, but don't limit yourself. Experience a lot of things. Don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid to, maybe extend yourself beyond your comfort zone, because you'll find that you're capable of doing more than you originally thought, and you're going to bring a lot of value to whoever you're working with, your family, your company, your best friend. Just reach out a little farther than you're comfortable with, and you'll find you're probably capable of more things than you imagined. That brings me back to my other pick of the week. One of the things that's definitely been a benefit is the TED Talks. I don't know if anybody else has brought that up before, but that's an opportunity to see a wide variety of business and personal and professional growth applications. Yeah. Every story isn't germane, but when you do find one that applies to you, it can be the aha moment that I was at that point in my life and this person was successful. Okay, now I can be successful. So, and they're not overly technical. They're more about life lessons. So that's a very, very good way to kind of get a better sense of everything going on in life and the world around you.
Indeed. And since you mentioned TED Talks, I'm going to take another pick here.
Okay, two and one.
Two and one. Two. Well, I saw one the other day that was it wasn't a talk. It was a musical talk. So the guy he played a song. That's it. But he played Bohemian Rhapsody on a ukulele.
Okay.
And I only saw it because we recently bought our middle daughter she just turned 4, so we bought her a ukulele for her birthday.
Okay.
And
better than a drum set.
Better than a drum set, much better than a drum set. So I was looking for, videos on, that she could watch for I came across this guy playing Bohemian Rhapsody on a ukulele, and I was like, this can't be possible.
And you recognized that it definitely was Bohemian Rhapsody?
Oh my gosh, was it ever? It was Bohemian Rhapsody to the T. Like, you just nailed it. I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Awesome.
But I think it's things like that where you think about something that you never thought was possible, and then you see it or you hear it and you go, man, if that's possible, this other thing over here that I've been struggling with is also possible.
It's nice to have the unexpected come out.
Yeah.
And in the things that you do. So that's another good example. When you don't expect it, it's the twist at the end of the drama. It's the pitch at the end of the comedy. So it's all enjoyable when it turns you on your ear a little bit.
Indeed. Well, Mike, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
I'm glad you had time to come up here. Although I know you didn't come up here all the way from Florida just for us.
No, just for this, but I managed to work everything else in. So we're good.
We appreciate it. Well, Inside Engineering comes out every Tuesday. You can listen or watch on your favorite podcasting platform, where we're trying to be in as many places as possible. And don't forget to rate and review the show. It helps us to show up in more places. And also take a second on our website at rkk.com/podcast. We have just a short survey asking for some feedback. We want to make this show as relevant and as useful as possible. So thanks again for joining us. And we'll see you next week on another episode of Inside Engineering.